Welcome to the Fabric of America, the podcast that celebrates small businesses and the remarkable stories that weave our communities together. We're your hosts, Melissa Otto
and Matt Banover.
Matt is a fashion designer passionate about storytelling through style.
And Melissa is a seamstress on a mission to make sewing cool again and inspire the next generation. We sit down with small business owners, artisans, and dreamers to uncover the stories behind their brand, what inspires them, challenges them, and keeps them creating.
Because we believe that behind every idea, every design, every stitch, there's a story worth sharing. So grab a drink from your favorite local shop and join us as we weave together conversations about passion, perseverance, and the power of small business.
We recently discussed pattern making.
Yes.
Which is a little bit more in your wheelhouse because you have a technical background. I definitely
I dabbled.
Yes.
I touched it.
In the it professionally entered your world.
Yes. Yes. Do I do it as a professional? I mean, I guess I do some of it as a professional, but not in this way that we're about to.
Right. I learned more about it from like YouTube.
Fair. I thought you were going to say you, meaning me.
No. Oh God, no. No, I remember hearing the term pattern making fee, and I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And I went on, was like looking up what pattern was, and it was actually very difficult because when I was putting in like pattern making, it was
they were like checks or stripes.
Yeah, and I was like, "What? I don't know, no, like what? I don't even know what I mean." But once I found out, it was like discovering, behind the curtain, like, oh, wow, somebody needs to make the blueprint for the clothing.
Correct.
And we have that somebody on today.
It was a very cool conversation in the fact of, I think you and I have a baseline, even though I had more like hands-on experience with it than you. I think you and I both have a baseline understanding of exactly how difficult it really is to make clothing, to pattern clothing, right? There are so many layers and levels. There's so much technicality that you can put into it, or that you can even like cheapen out on it. And I think for people to understand the depths of what goes into garment making is to give them a better sense of like why things should cost a certain amount and who is affected by all of these things down the line. And so having this conversation with Xochil from the Chicago Pattern Maker was really enlightening. And so I hope that for the listener who has never even, who did think stripes or salads when we're talking about pattern, will gain a better understanding. Maybe they haven't listened to that pattern episode that you and I talked about. So first of all, go back and listen to that and then come back here.
Yes. Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Hold for pause. So this was really interesting because Xochil and I, our paths crossed online, and now we are constantly in the comments of people fighting the good fight for Made in America. We're talking about how there are factories here. We're really connected on this cause. So this was a really fun conversation, both technically, but also what this mission is. And I just, why don't we just get into it here? Xochil on the Fabric of America. Basically, like, how did you get into this industry? Are you professionally trained? Did you just wake up one day and say, I actually want to do this? Like, what was the allure and what was the path?
A little of both. It's funny you asked that because I think the number one question is people ask, were you born into it or were you tricked into it?
That's a good way to phrase it.
That's hilarious.
And so that's like my new favorite thing to ask people in the industry is like, yeah, what's your story? Well, so going way, way back, I got interested in sewing as a child. My grandmother, who's my mom's mom, taught me how to sew, and originally doll clothes, and then eventually I was sewing clothes for myself. I was in 4-H, and my 4-H leader was an avid sewer as well and helped me with some things. My mom reluctantly helped me with sewing projects. She knew how to do it, but she's not really into that stuff. But I used to do like like dance outfits for like school dances, for school, or started making stuff for my friends. But it wasn't really until like later in high school when I was junior, senior, where I discovered like, oh, there's like an industry that does this and I could do this for work and not just for fun. So that was how I kind of meandered my way through that. But I did go to fashion school. I went to the Illinois Institute of Art for fashion design and got a BFA there, and then went on to do a business degree. After that, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur someday, and then it happened really quickly.
As it does, it's just kind of that's like lured or tricked into it.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, I guess this is what we're doing now.
Yep.
Here we go. Buckle up.
That's
And
really
how-
cool. When you were going to school for design, were you thinking I want to be a designer? Like I went to FIT, I went for fashion design, got a BFA, like all the things, same thing. But I was like, I don't know about being a designer. Like maybe?
Yeah, I feel like when I first started school, that was like, I'm gonna have my own label, and that's probably what most people going into design school think. Once I got there, though, I really found my love was in like pattern making and problem solving, and less so in like coming up with the concepts. Like that's fun to mood board and stuff like that, but it wasn't really what I loved to do. So, and I when I figured out what I loved, but also noticed lots of people around me hated pattern making. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is my lane. This is where I need to be.
Nice.
and so we did a short episode on pattern making. I I guess I've never really thought about it until right now. Is there, when you get into pattern making, I know that like my factory in New York and pretty much all my factories use a CAD machine.
Hmm.
Or when you say you get into pattern making, what does that actually look like? Are you actually studying paper patterns? I would assume you start there, but in the reality of how many factories use CAD machines, how does that information that you're learning translate to how factories are using patterns today?
Sure. So I was trained first by hand, and for many years would do all my patterns by hand, um, digitizing them once we got through like an approved sample and we're ready to grade it. Luckily, I did not have to do the hand grading too often. I did it for one job and for a small company, but it's very tedious and very manual, So I'm glad that of I guess I'm in the generation that I don't have to do that as much by hand. But for many years would be doing all my, pattern drafts, oak tag, cutting them up, making the revisions, all of that stuff. Now I use CAD pretty much exclusively. There are times where you need to drape a piece, or, I'll print something out and like try it out, fix it kind of thing. But for the most part, I'm really comfortable with CAD, and it's more so it's a tool. It's not doing the work for you the same way like an illustrator is going to use Adobe or, other products to make their art, but you still need that person to do it.
Now, I guess I forget if I said this before, but I guess for the listener who doesn't
Yeah.
know what CAD is, that's cut and design. So a pattern is input, and that pattern is laid out on the fabric digitally, and then this laser like rips across and cuts it immediately. So it takes what used to take hours and hours into 2 minutes.
Well, I feel like there's like five definitions of CAD. So like that would be like one of them. But So there's CAD, people use CAD to say their flat sketch in Illustrator, and there's like that definition. There's CAD for pattern design, which I use. Even the term pattern, I always have to clarify with people because they'll say, oh, you're a pattern maker, so you do like graphic design or whatever. And like, no, that's print design. And
Right.
they come in patterns, but it's not
Right.
cut and sew blueprint. So yeah, to clarify, my patterns are the blueprint of the garment. But Matt, what you were saying, it takes it the step further of like what happens after you make the pattern. And so my studio, I plot it out on a paper, printer, wide format, cut it out of fabric, still do the prototyping that way. Obviously, factories vary whether they have, placing markers on top of fabric, plies, or whether they're doing laser cutting or automated cutting in some way. So there's ways to extract the CAD to be usable.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't think I actually realized that the cut and design is what happens inside before the machine actually
It's the
does it?
program.
It's
Like,
the
so think of like
program.
computer aided design, like CAD as
Okay.
computer aided design.
Wild.
Using the computer for that. And the other thing that she was talking about too, that I want to just clarify for the listener also, in case they didn't listen to the pattern making episode, is that grading you're talking about is this raging pain in the ass process, at least when you do it by hand, which is, let's say you design something and you've made a prototype and it's a size medium. When you grade it, you're taking it up sizes to like a large, an extra large, etc., and grading it down. So you go, up and down basically from your base pattern. And when you do it by hand, there's all sorts of technical know-how that you have to have in terms of how curves change versus how width versus how height changes. And you can set those parameters as a designer too. So that's why like sizing varies from company to company, because their charts are all going to be different. Their standards of grading are all going to be different, and their jump off is going to be different. They may start at a size small or a size 4 and grade out an up and down, versus someone else might start at a size 10 and grade up and down.
Right. Right. And the manual system is, so thinking very, very basically, like your chest measurement, for example, might be 2 inches per size. So it's a very simple example, but your neck grades differently or your shoulder grades differently. Like not everything on the body is grading at the same rate, but they're kind of related ratios or percentages to one another. And so doing it by hand, doing it by computer is still a very, very tough skill. But doing it by hand isn't even like larger.
Yeah.
Skill.
It's an undertaking.
Yes.
It's such an undertaking. And I think people don't realize like what we talk about a lot here is kind of demystifying the process of just making clothing in general. And I don't think people realize all of the steps that have to go into all the things that happen before a product hits the shelf. It's not just the sewing and it's done, or the shipping and it's done. It's not, Matt always says, it's not fairies making it in the middle of the night. There's a lot of backstory there.
Yeah, but I think that word blueprint is a really good frame of reference. You can't just say, oh, I need a house and expect a house to be built. There needs to be a blueprint. And that's the same thing for clothing. Same thing, replace house with suit. You can't just say, hey, I need a suit and I need a couple sizes. There needs to be a blueprint for how the armhole looks, like the depth of it. And you try out an Italian suit versus American suit, the armhole's going to hit you in different places. And it's everything that you're saying about how that grades. So how did you go from, okay, you've got this crazy technical knowledge that 1 in a million people have. And when did that entrepreneurship kind of like just show up? Like, okay, I guess you're doing this.
So after college, I worked for a boutique for about 3 years. And then I was in the lucky elder millennial generation that got laid off from my job in 2009 when everybody got laid off in the world, or so it seemed. And so I was at that kind of crossroads of like, what do I do? I cobbled together. I'm a very like hands-on, roll your sleeves up kind of girl. So I cobbled together multiple jobs, one of which was another boutique, but she only needed a pattern maker, sample maker, like 2 or 3 days a week. I worked as a tailor for a styling business. So I worked directly with a personal styler or stylist, excuse me, who would buy outfits for professional women, at Kraft Foods and Deloitte and all these like really big companies, but then needed them to be tailored. So I served as that role. I feel like I learned so much just taking things apart and putting them back together, getting the fit down. That helps me, to this day still working on many different body types. I know both of you have experience with that as well. Like tailoring is such a great experience for a pattern maker. But yeah, cobbled that together and then started going on Craigslist at the time and finding, hey, someone needs this made. They need a uniform or they need a new clothing line that someone was trying to start. And so I just kind of went to every single event and networked and was like, I can do this. And eventually turned that into the main part of what is today the Chicago Pattern Maker and really exclusively doing product development. But it was lots of different pieces to get there.
That's really cool. Do you have a staff on hand now that helps you out, or is you the
I do. Yeah, I have two
Awesome.
assistants under me, who are basically full time. They're regularly helping me, so that's exciting. And I feel like I'm getting ready to hopefully hire a third person. Um, but yeah, they definitely help me with the prototype selling, the tech packs. So they're doing the sketches, they're doing technical details, and kind of overseeing and helping with sourcing. And I'm the only pattern maker at the moment, although that's something I am working on, like training both of them into helping with markers and helping with some actual pattern development. But it's something as a creative, I enjoy. So I've had trouble like relinquishing that aspect of it. As like I love the pattern making, so I almost would rather hire an operations person versus hiring another pattern maker, just because I love that aspect so
I
much.
hear that so
Yeah.
deeply. So deeply.
I was just gonna say, who's speaking right now?
Is it
Elizabeth
me
or
or is it you? Yeah, no, we are one and the same, my friend. I feel that so deeply. And I did in fact have I have an operations manager, and it is one of the best decisions I ever made for my
Yes.
business. So I'm gonna throw one out there for an ops manager.
That's awesome.
I get it. Do what you love. But what do you find is the most popular service that you provide right now? Is there one that like you get asked to do like head and shoulders more than the others?
So a varied clientele. At first, it was mostly startups. I still do work with a lot of startups and small businesses, and I think I always will. I have a love for that. So I'm helping them with everything. I mean, they come for patterns or they think they just need a pattern, but then they don't realize, like, oh, I need help with sourcing. I need help with finding a factory to make this. I need to prototype. I can't just like make a pattern and go into production. There's a lot more to it. The tech pack component, especially, a lot of people just don't know what a tech pack is and why they need it and why their factory needs it. So there's a little bit of education involved in that. Um, so that's a huge thing. I also work directly with a couple of bigger brands or factories that they might have in-house pattern making, they might not, but I support them with those services. And some of the factories I work with, like they work with many clients. I don't ever interface directly with their clients, but I do the patterns or do the grading and just do what they need.
When you were talking about a tech pack, so please explain that to the listener, what exactly a
Yes.
tech pack is.
So your tech pack is basically a visual contract that you have with your factory. It spells out everything like your recipe, essentially how to read your blueprint, how to put it together. It's your flat sketch. It's all the construction details. So what types of sewing machines, what type of operations are going into constructing the garment, top stitching, your bill of materials. So every zipper, snap, button, all those different components, where that fabric is coming from, your yield, how much of the fabric or how many buttons, stuff like that is all in there. And then really important is your measurement specifications and how to measure that. So for example, my jacket, like what's the high point shoulder measurement? What's my chest? What's the cuff? All those details. And then you build in also your tolerances or what you're allowing as something comes back from production, what's still considered a small, or if it's, out of tolerance, maybe now this isn't acceptable because it fits like an extra small or something like that.
It's been a common theme on here, and I'll never forget. I got one of those big coffee table books. I think it was called Dressing the Man. I think it was Dressing the Man. And in the beginning part of the book, it talks about how we live in a time where there's never been so much clothing sold and so little knowledge about what's being sold.
Yeah.
Barrier to entry into this industry doesn't exist. You could just walk off the street and say, I want to sell jeans. And probably by the end of the week, you could sell jeans. You could have no knowledge on fabric or whatever, depending on the level of involvement you want to have. I mean, there's plenty of people, my contemporaries are not knowledgeable on patterns at all. And I have to fight to work to get that knowledge because and I don't fault any of my factories, but they have to protect their patterns and make sure that they aren't, reused in other places. But I sit down and I talk with my factories and I'm like, explain this to me. Explain how we went from this size to this size. What are you altering on the pattern? What should I look for? And especially in what I do, I have to keep into consideration the fabric also. Making a garment in something like a silk bamboo blend is much different than a worsted wool and how that's going to affect the pattern. And I have found that a lot of people when they talk about pattern making, almost it's like a badge of honor. They're like, if I can talk about the pattern, then I'm this next tier of knowledgeable person. When people approach you, do you find that, let me back up one more bit. So I actually help rep my garment factory and I get calls all the time, people wanting to start a custom clothing business. And this happened yesterday. I asked the guy, I was like, okay, we have our own patterns. And he was like, what do you mean? Like solids and plaids? And I was like, okay, so you don't know what this business is and what this industry is. Do you find that the people coming to you do have that base knowledge, or do they know what they don't know? They come to you and they're like, listen, there's all this information about patterns and zippers, and I don't really know. And that's why I'm coming to you. What's the level of knowledge people are coming to you with?
It varies so greatly.
Wow, that's
what they're
interesting.
coming to the table with. Some people have done some research and come knowing, even though they don't know how to make a pattern themselves, they understand that they need a pattern. Sometimes they know that they need a tech pack. Sometimes it's opposite where they're like, oh, I need a tech pack, and they don't actually think about the pattern at all. I think that's because there's so many full package overseas options for manufacturing that they have their own pattern maker. So you put together a spec package, you send it to them, and then they take care of everything in the background, as fairies do, right?
Yeah.
But really, there's people like me in any of those factories doing exactly what I do. The benefit though, and what I explain is why hire a pattern maker directly is you own the pattern. So regardless of which factory you might work with, you can take that blueprint and shop it to whichever contractor you want to. So it is very much like that house example, where if you would just go to the builder and say, okay, this is the house, I'm gonna choose what you have, or I'm just gonna trust what you have, it's a different experience than hiring the architect. I actually hate pattern maker is such a dumbed down title for what actually happens. I really wish that we could get on board with calling it like pattern engineering or clothing engineering, because that's truly what it entails. There's so much involved, the math, all the proportion, understanding of fit, all of those things, the fabric, everything that goes into it. Um, Pattern maker doesn't really encapsulate everything, and even in the UK, they say pattern cutter, which I think is even worse. Like it's a really old school term, but they still use that.
That's
Like an
fascinating.
oversimplification.
It is. It is.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I get asked all the time, can I make a dress or can I do this or can I? And I tell people, I'm like, well, what my people do, they're kind of like engineers. An engineer can either make a plane or a train, or just
Right.
because you're an engineer doesn't mean you can make all the things. Same thing with my factory in Rochester. Just because they make clothing doesn't mean they can make a t-shirt. So that's interesting. Well, at least that I'm out here. I am already on board with the engineer perspective.
Trying to explain this, like it's
Yeah.
way more than this.
Yeah. We've talked about that in terms of alterations. We do bridal alterations here, and how it is literally like reverse engineering and then re-engineering, sometimes in a completely different way than the original stuff was sewn, because of either how you have to approach it or what alterations you have to do given like the person's body. And it's insane. Like the technicality and the finesse that you have to have for any little piece of the sector when you're doing quality work. Let me
Yes.
put that little note in there. When
caveat,
you're doing
yes.
quality work, is really substantial. And I think that like the one thing that sort of has bonded us together and like connecting with you about all of this is that we care about that nuance and that, upper echelon, that upper level
Right.
to the craft,
Yeah, I want to do things right, not just do things to do things. I know that that's not going to make me the pattern maker for everybody, and that might mean some people just go again factory direct and put together. I don't care what my t-shirt fits like; it's a t-shirt. And then there's other people who do care what that looks like. It's funny, even something as simple as a t-shirt, you might have two brands, one that invested, some time into the development and the fit, and one that didn't. And the customer, the end consumer, might not be able to pinpoint like what is different about them until they put it on. And then still they might not be able to say, oh, the armhole is different or whatever, but it's going to feel different when they wear it. And they're going to buy the one again that fits well. So I want to be in that bucket of things.
I love that.
Mm.
As you've been working throughout the years, and I think you and I are probably close in age, where we've seen some things and we've seen things change, right? So like where we learned how to do stuff by hand, now a lot of it's automated. How have you seen some like major pieces of what you do in your industry change over the last, like, let's say 10 years?
Gosh, I feel like it's on like hyper speed now, especially with 3D prototyping and that aspect. AI is like on everybody's tip of their tongue. I feel like that's the game changer right now, and how to utilize that in a positive way. I've received some interesting things on all spectrums. One that I find just funny is I've had several people now who are like, "Oh, I got recommended to you by ChatGPT."
Ah,
I'm like, that's cool.
that's actually awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Robots like us.
So
We
they
wanna
like
keep it
me.
that
That's
way. Yeah.
good news for me. But on I get both spectrums. Like I've seen really cool tools that someone popped in a sketch or gave it a prompt and will spit out like, essentially a sketch, but it is a realistic garment or photorealistic garment. And they're like, this is what I want to make. And there's always nuances of like, well, actually, like the AI didn't finish this binding on both the front and back. So there's, things it needs to learn, I guess. But there's still not a bridge yet between that to, again, your blueprint, your cut and sew pattern. So it's a good tool for me to understand maybe better than what they're able to sketch. A lot of people don't have that artistic ability to communicate it. So I love that. On the flip side, I've also had a couple meetings and inquiries in the last week where someone's like, I have a tech pack. And then they send me what is the tech pack. And it's a list from ChatGPT or whatever AI model. And it's like, here's your tech pack cover page. And it lists some things. Materials lists some things. Construction details lists some things. No pictures. No, it's not a tech pack. It's an outline of a tech pack, but so like
That's
you have to
hilarious.
teach some things here and make sure that's not ending up at the factories.
Now,
Yeah,
when
Go
you
ahead.
were talking about the like one of the things I know nothing about, this might just even be like I might be describing this wrong, but I'm so curious your perspective of it because you're in this side of the industry. I have heard rumblings that there is now a pretty good system for like avatar creation where you can check your patterns digitally on a digital avatar. Is that for real? Because I've never actually seen it. And is it working well? Like, have you had any experience with that? Is it saving time?
Yeah, the industry is definitely moving that direction. There's lots of programs. So Clo 3D is pretty widely used. It's very democratically priced, so it's easy for freelancers, especially to get into. Browseware, I'm seeing more used on the corporate level. It's a much more expensive license, but similar tools. So I do see that happening. And so I'm also an adjunct professor at Columbia College Chicago. Our students have been using 3D, development tools in their education, and I feel like that's giving them a leg up over more seasoned people who maybe haven't trained themselves yet on those tools. So that'll be an interesting shift. Again, I don't think it replaces fitting on a human body. They have not been able to replicate the squishiness of a human body. It's the same thing as working on a mannequin. Like, it's better than not having a person at all, but it's not a person, right? So I see the avatar as very much replacing a mannequin and being able to spot check something before you cut it in fabric. The fabric physics are really interesting. They're trying to mimic, the drape and stretch and all those different things. But to me, again, like, I would use it as a tool, as a first prototype design tool, but I would never use it as like, oh, this is ready to go into production without seeing it physically in the real fabric.
That makes total sense.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I just had a client that I sent him an image on ChatGPT just to give him an idea of like, this is, and it's just a jumping off point,
It's a good visualization tool. I love it for that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, if you spent more time examining, okay, well, do you have fabric like that? Then we get into issues, because it's like, well, no, because this fabric it's not fabric. It's just
not a real one.
Right.
3D rendered image. But I wanted to segue into a topic that I think is very near and dear to all of our hearts. And something that has come up a lot, and it's one of the reasons we started this podcast, was how are you taking action in what you wear, and how does that make an effect around the people you interact with, whether it's customers, whether it's colleagues, whether it's just random passerbys, friends, family. You and I definitely are always, if there's an Instagram post about Made in America, we're in the comments fighting.
We're in the comment section, like schooling everybody.
Yeah, always. So like, how did that kind of enter the scene? Has Made in America always been important to you? But, kind of dive into that a little.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of things have influenced that over the course of my life. Coming from a working class family, my mom had her own business doing like cleaning and managing household kind of things for disabled people and elderly people. My dad came from a background in, well, when I was growing up, before I have memory of, but he was a construction laborer, so he was in a union. So again, very working class. Prior to that, when I was a baby, so I don't have memory of this, but lots of stories. He made his own jewelry and sold that at different fairs and stuff like that. So having that background of my family and even people we were surrounded with, family, friends, I knew the importance, I think, early on, maybe before I was able to quantify, but like how important it is to like shop in your community and shop locally, shop small businesses, that like people are kind of at the heart and core of everything. And that there's value to, skilled work. I think as an adult, and again, coming in the industry, spending lots of time in the factories and like learning from the sample makers, learning from the people on the floor. And that really, again, like helped teach me how to better make pattern, or sitting with a cutter and having him explain like how they spread the fabric, or matching plaids with, nail spreading to match plaids and stuff like that. Having a really hands-on lesson on how things worked, it just made me appreciate all the work and effort that goes into it, and how important like me as a consumer in this ecosystem, like I have a role not only to talk the talk, but like walk the walk. Things that I purchase matter, things that I talk about matter. Yeah. So lots of those types of things, and being involved with like the local Chicago community, especially design community. I, like everyone, our wardrobes come from everywhere, but I do shop a lot secondhand. I try to shop like local and small designers as much as I can. And even shopping from my clients, like they've supported me and I'd like to support them back as well.
That's
That's
awesome.
really cool. That's awesome. When you're okay, so I have two questions. The first one I want to ask is because you mentioned that you work as a professor as well. So you're kind of getting this like finger on the pulse of like the younger generation. What are some of like the attitudes and the things that they're like either lit up about or totally ignorant of, or like where do you see things happening for the younger generation?
There's a ton of passion around sustainability, and I feel like that's probably not a new thing, but it's definitely at the heart and core of a lot of what they're interested in and having an impact. And I do think no matter how they enter the industry, whether it's as a small brand or working for small businesses or whether they go corporate, if enough of them are sort of infiltrating, like hopefully this does have an effect sooner than later. But there's a lot of outside things for them to battle up against. So there's that. But there's a lot of passion around that. And I would say another big theme I see is inclusivity around gender, around disabilities, around like making things available to people to make them feel good no matter where they're at.
I
That's
love that.
yeah.
It's inspiring. It really is.
There's
to be
hope.
around
There's
that.
hope.
Yes.
I think that's awesome. Okay. I had a second thing. I lost it. So Matt, you go. And it will come back to me.
Yeah. I was like, all right, there's a
I
second.
know you were waiting. I know there was a second thing. I'm gonna marinate.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask, going back to the Made in America thing, for me, Made in America was the reason I started a business. I wanted to, that came first. And then how do I capitalize on this mission to support American
It
manufacturing?
really is a mission, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. How, which for you, was it just something that you saw? Like, what did it come first? Did it come after? Was it kind of always a part of it? You said that you had those values,
Yeah.
but when did like those actual words "Made in America" become a bigger deal? Because it definitely has become a bigger deal, obviously, in the last 10 years because of all the political thing. But, um, for you in this, and how it shows up in your business, what kind of came first?
So again, with visiting factories locally in Chicago, I had a very big thing around like, made in Chicago for a while, and my sphere has broadened. I still love to work in Chicago, obviously. Um, US made has always been really important to me though, and kind of recognizing again that there's a craftsmanship and value in that. I mean, even before, so my first like big girl job in high school, it's not a real big girl job, but we'll use that. I worked at the Buckle in high school and we sold Lucky Brand jeans, which at the time were made in the USA. And I remember like learning from my manager, like all the different like features and selling, design features, functional features, things that you would show to be like, this is really great. And this is, made in America. And that was a selling point. I got really excited about that. Years later, I don't think any of Lucky Brand jeans are made in America. I've switched to different brands, and I still like my jeans to be made in America. Um, in college and after college, I met a friend who had a blog for a while called the Made in America Guide to Life, and she and I were both really passionate about just made in America products, not just clothing exclusively. And I wrote a couple of like guest blog posts for her, discovering different brands. When Motorola made a phone in the US for about 2 or 3 years, I bought that phone. I think it's important to look for the American made options. And yes, depending on your stage of life and your budget, like that might not always be feasible all the time, but I think we can all make those decisions and save up, money to be able to buy those things and support those initiatives. I'm not a big Walmart fan and really am not a Walmart shopper, but when they did American Giant collaboration with a t-shirt last year, I was at my Walmart buying that t-shirt because I wanted to make sure they knew, okay, if this shirt sells out, we'll do more of this, right? So spreading the word with colleagues and people who are outside of the industry and trying to educate them, like the reason you don't see it is because it's not being supported. So the more you support it, the bigger it will grow.
Boom, there it is.
Mic drop.
That is it. Oh my God. I that is one of the biggest conversations I have with people who, my friends who will confide in me in private and say, like, Matt, I want to support, but it's so annoying. You got to call, you got to drive there. They don't have a website. I was like, well, maybe if you supported them, they could pay for a better website and they could pay for tech support and they could pay for all this stuff. It's how it works.
Right.
Like you pay them, there's more of that.
Yeah.
So we're always talking about the chicken versus the egg, right? Like it's got to start somewhere.
We got to start somewhere. And again, like if that means that you're not buying as much, that's a good thing.
That's a great thing.
It's a great thing. Slow it down, buy pieces that will last you longer. And I don't know, know that you're supporting your neighbors, your community, your larger, domestic community, your country. I think we have to get a little bit patriotic about it, and patriotism doesn't belong to one party. So just make that clear too, is like we can
I need my little ham horn app.
We have to support each other. We do.
Yeah.
You're just dropping these like fire sound.
I know. Boom, boom, boom. No. I'll be your sound effect like hype woman.
Awesome. I think Made America needs a hype person. I mean, we really do.
They're right here.
The three of us.
Boom.
Yeah, the three of us. We got it going on.
Yes. But it's so funny, like mentioning the business of fashion articles and some other like sources. I'm glad to have like people like you to like send that to and be like, help me like reach some people here. Like you don't want to ever be the only one in the room, so to speak, saying that. So getting around like-minded people and making it well known.
Right. And I think it does help when we tag each other, because our point is that there are many of us.
Right.
If there was just one person in the comments, it's like, okay, you and what army? But
like we're not dead here. So
yeah, exactly. That's one of my favorite things. Melissa, I don't know if you've ever seen, but Xochil has like done this awesome thing branding this. Let's get away from this notion of bringing American jobs back, bringing manufacturing back, bringing American manufacturing back to life. It's already here. It already exists. Right. It's alive.
Rally behind where we're at.
Yes.
And to your exact point, even just as the example that you used with shopping the American made products in Walmart, if we don't do it, they can't do more of it.
Exactly.
So it has to be like, you have to begin somewhere with the patience, with the slowdown, with the putting in the effort and making those first steps to changing your own mindset as consumers around where your stuff is coming from. I now read labels of clothing products like a nutrition label, where I never used to read a nutrition. You know what I mean? Like there's a process for each of us, and there's an entry point for each of us. And then we get in, then it becomes a habit. Then it becomes like completely not something that you think about. It's just what you do. And I think that that's so important. And actually, Matt, that's a perfect segue, because one of the things that I wanted to talk about and get your perspective on is, there's this idea of taking action, right? Of all of us as individuals and how we consume and how we shop. What do you see as like actionable steps on maybe a grander scale, a bigger scale? Have you worked with any, organizations, anything like change makers, people who are taking it from, let's say, I don't want to say a political, but like from that governmental type standpoint to affect change in those ways?
Sure. So I feel like it's a good way to say it, how Matt and I were introduced, and then you, Melissa, as well, but was through Rachel Slade, ironically, who, yes, love
Snaps to Rachel.
So that is how we got connected in this funny way the internet works. But how did I find out about her books? I found out about her book somehow. I knew that I had to have her as a speaker for, I'm part of the Seams Association, which is a Made in USA trade association for fabric mills, yarn suppliers, cut and sew factories, like basically the whole US supply chain. And we were putting together a conference. I wanted to read her book. I presented it to the board. I'm like, I'm going to get this woman to speak. And they're like, sure you are. And I'm like, watch me do it.
Yeah, right. Hold my beer or my non-alcoholic beverage, and I'll be right back. Challenge
And so I got tagged on something on LinkedIn. She'd asked a question. A colleague tagged me in it. She thinks she was looking for like a US product in some category. I don't even recall what it was. But anyway, I saw she was quite busy, popular on LinkedIn. I'm like, I'm going to go on Instagram and see if she's there. Sure enough, she was there, didn't have a massive following. So I'm like, I'll connect with her there. 2 minutes later, she sends me a message like, I would love for you to read my book. I'm like, I don't know how you know who I am, but yes, I want to read your book. She sent me a copy. And then I'm like, well, now she's my best friend. So I'm going to
You can't have her. She's already our best friend. So
Yeah, exactly.
get in line.
So invited her to do this talk. She agreed to do it. And I was like, boom, I told them I could do this and I did it. So, but reading that and reading things like that, again, I feel like there's so many stories like what she shared, both about the history of the industry in our country and then about American roots that she profiled. Like, we need more books like this. We need podcasts. We need storytelling to be happening to show everybody out there, like, no, this isn't just like hidden away in, some warehouse random place in America. Like, there's a thriving industry, and no, it's not what it was 40 years ago or before, but it is still here, and there's still lots of people working really hard to make great things here.
Yeah,
I
you'll
love
be
that.
happy to know that we just interviewed
Rachel.
Yes.
a couple days
I'm
ago.
excited to listen. She's amazing.
She is the best. It's really funny. So what you were just talking about reminded me of something that I had seen from, it wasn't an Instagram account that I regularly follow, but it, the algorithm being what it is, feeds us all the shit we're hungry for. And it was a woman who was a maker, and she was like getting really heated, and I appreciated the philosophy. And she was basically like, don't tell me that sewing is a dying art. Sewing is alive and well. And I do this and I do that. And she like popped off. And so I see both sides, right? Because I have been in this sphere of, yes, like, you can't deny that the numbers have been in decline. But at the same time, people are still doing it. Don't just discount all of us who are putting in the effort, who are of a younger generation, who want to see these things continue to thrive. It's the same thing for manufacturing. Don't say it's dead. Is it different? Is it changed? Is it on the downturn? Sure, it has been. It's just the way things have evolved, unfortunately, given A, B, C, and D, cause and effect. But let's do our best to uplift what's here. And the more you show it, the more you call it out, the more you shine the light on it, the more people go, oh, they're already doing it. Like, maybe I could do that too. Or maybe I want to go work for them or get my stuff made there or what have you. And to that point, I would love to know, because obviously you're in the business of making some recommendations too, I think, for people for production. Are you kind of like, I don't want to say rah-rah in a negative way, but are you kind of like, I'm going to bounce to my like American manufacturing first? Do you kind of base it on the needs of the person who's approaching you? How do you like?
Yeah, I mean, as a developer and as a pattern maker, I'd live in a little bit of both worlds, and I recognize that US supply chain is not going to work for 100% of people all the time. I do think there's room for there to be a mix. Even within a small brand, you could have some of your products made here and not all. And I think we should cheerlead those that do and not say, oh, well, not everything's made. Like, well, it's great that you're making one, so let's support you. And so then maybe you can make some more. And maybe, certain capabilities are harder to find. MOQs are higher, stuff like that. So there's things to navigate, and those are real. So don't ever take that away, even though, yes, I would love for 100% of my clients to make everything here. That'd be amazing. But I am very willing and able to help them make that happen if that's something that's important to them. And I think obviously because I talk about it, I attract what I'm looking for. And I do get those clients who find it important and figure out ways to make that work for them and their business. So but I work with people. The main thing for me is ethical manufacturing, regardless of where it is. I want to make sure that a factory that I'm recommending or that I'm working with is run well, that the employees are treated fairly, paid fairly, that, I'm not associated or in any fashion, like publicly or not, like I don't want anything to do with a bad situation for people. So again, with that worker mentality, regardless of what country you're located in, that's my number one.
It's awesome.
Awesome.
That'd
How
be-
did you get connected to factories all over, including overseas?
So, I mean, my domestic supply chain contacts are definitely much more robust. The few factories I've worked with overseas, sometimes it's through a client and they've sourced it, and then I can kind of get to know them, vet them out a little bit myself, and feel comfortable recommending someone else to work with them. But I really have a couple of go-tos, and one was through a client. Relationship. They're in Vietnam, and I got to know the owner and, do a tour on Zoom and stuff like that. So I could feel really comfortable in understanding their mission and their priorities. Some of the other ones that I work with in India, they have a US, entity. And so I feel comfortable again, like, and I've done the same thing, done like Zoom tours of the facilities. So I kind of understand what's going on and what the workers look like. And there's no videos of people looking crazy or dead eyes or those types of things where they're just zoned out. Like that's a definite sign of a bad workplace. Having that trust and having
Matt's laughing because he looks like that every day. when he's working.
Exactly. I was like, is that a sign? Because I
Is
need-
that that's Matt?
that is a sign. That is a
Status
sign.
right now. Sorry.
It's a little different when you're the entrepreneur wearing 50 hats
Right, exactly. I was like, is dead
versus
noise
the worker, but
is dead inside a bad thing? Because that feels every day.
yes, but here you are laughing, so we know you're okay.
The only way to get through it. It's just a laugh.
Yes, but yeah, so having a way to vet that out and make sure it's a place I feel comfortable, confident, again, sending my clients to if I don't feel okay about it or I see those kind of warning signs, I'm like, I don't want to even mess with it. I always think the best case scenario is visit a place in person. I recommend clients go to trade shows, go to visit their factories, again, wherever they are located, or have someone they trust be able to do that. Because
Yeah.
that's going to be way better than a virtual visit, of course.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I try to post as much as I can about the factories that I go to. Like, look,
Yeah.
here it is. This is the magic.
I
here.
love that you do that too. And that's something we again need to do more of. We have like this PR problem of like they're around, they need to be shown. I used to see a lot more of this. I see less of this, I'm glad, where people gatekeep their factories and they're like, I don't want to tell anyone where I make my stuff because, well, then they're not going to be able to make my stuff. Like, but on the flip side, and this is how your factory feels too, like if you don't share them and amplify them, like how are they supposed to grow? They might lose a client who's bigger than you and shut their doors. And you could have been a little piece of like helping them if all you did was say, I make my stuff here.
Yeah, I try to it's a tough line being in that position.
Yeah.
I do everything in my power to say there is a factor that makes it. And I promote that. It's not like I don't own the factory. I'm not there
Right.
making the stuff. If somebody were to ask me, like a colleague, hey, I would tell them immediately.
Sure.
I mean, we had Bitch Gambert on this show. So like he makes my shirts. Like I'm not, I'm not that upset, but
it's not a guarded secret. Yeah.
yeah, it is, but I'm less guarded about Mitch because he doesn't sell B2C, like business to consumer. He doesn't have a retail
Right.
business. Because in my industry, it's always fearful, like, well, why would I buy from you? Why don't I just go direct to them? So there's always that line, but I'm always happy. If you're in the industry, let's have a conversation. I want you. I mean, like I said, I work for my factory to promote them. Like when I do trade shows, it's to promote the factory. It's not for me. So I'm happy to have those conversations, but it is really frustrating when people gatekeep that stuff because you know,
Yeah, I reckon like various levels of transparency. Maybe you don't want to put their name on your website, for example, for any random person or competitor to see. But yeah, if an industry person asks where do you do that, or can I get a contact? I'm looking for XYZ. I think behind the scenes we do help each other a lot more than people realize. I have great relationships with factories that I've never actually worked with personally because I don't do the type of product they do or they don't do the volume that they do. But we're still colleagues and have the same like values and mission around things. So if I get a project that isn't for me, I can send it their way and support them in different ways. So
and you don't have that dialogue and that credibility in the industry if you only gatekeep. So I think that's really important. What is what's the hope for the future? Like what's your thing that you're working toward? Like Melissa and I talk a lot about we want, and it's not a small goal, but we really want to change behavior. We want people to just have that like stop and think. That would be the goal. Just people stop and think and really kind of shift. For you being much more on like the technical point, would you, and you're with these students, which is so cool. If you ever looking for two guest speakers,
yeah, absolutely.
Just fireworks shooting off and
hello, student body. Like I'll be that awkward millennial lady. Like, hello, young person.
Hello, fellow children.
Hello, fellow children. Yes, that's me.
Just walking like the righteous gemstones.
100%
Amazing.
But anyway, like what is your kind of big hope long term? What would you like to see kind of, directly in the industry, but also kind of bigger?
I mean, definitely a growth in companies investing in the US. I feel like it's a very sad thing that most American brands that people generally, not you guys, because you're more educated than the average consumer, but like generally people are like, what's an iconic American brand, right? And they'll think of all these different companies and none of it's made here. It's designed here, but none of it's made here. And I wish that, and I hope that this will happen in some way, that even a percentage, because that would make a huge impact. Like we only have barely 3% of the clothing that we buy in the United States is made here. We could bump it up to 5 and that'd have like a massive impact and hundreds of thousands of more jobs. If we bump it up to 10%, like let's just imagine like what that really looks like, as people as we know now in the industry, it's really still small and it could be double the size and still be a tiny percent of the bigger picture. It's not saying that that company has to completely onshore, although that'd be amazing. But again, recognizing we're in a global world and that's okay, but bring some of it home.
Yeah. Do you imagine getting like a report one day and that needle just ticks in the opposite direction?
It's 4%. Like how exciting that would be.
Holy shit. That would be amazing.
Yeah. And what's funny is like, that also kind of goes back to a point that you had made when we were talking about, jobs being here. Something that's come up a couple times is that will American manufacturing get to back where it was? Maybe not, but also the goal shouldn't be for it to replace what Shein and fast fashion are now. Like we should be fine with just lower levels of production of clothing in general.
You don't need all of those clothes.
Yeah,
you don't need any clothing theoretically.
Right. That is very much that should.
I think I've read something like we have enough clothing in the world to clothe the next like 7 generations or something.
6 generations, homegirl. Yep.
I think this is the 3rd podcast in a row that's come up.
Someone else has met. Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
It's like hard to comprehend, like billions of people. That's for their lifetime.
Nope. Yeah. So we don't want to replace the like mass manufacturing that exists currently. We need to definitely scale that back. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to create, again, higher quality, more complex goods. US might not be in the business of making like t-shirts all day long. Like some of them are made here, but that doesn't need to be the product. They can be jackets, they can be denim, they can be, blazers. We can make more complex things that are high value and that the consumer is more willing to pay a higher cost for versus, a pair of leggings, for example, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think everything can be made here, but just I think there's more opportunity in the higher price point.
Yeah. Speaking of, I just got an email notification that my Imogen and Willie t-shirts have been delivered.
Ah,
100% made in America t-shirts. I did the
that.
2-pack. I think it was 2 for $98. And I'm just like, hell yes, I would absolutely pay this amount of money. Like, no care in the world, because I'm not going to need 4 or 5 or 10 other t-shirts that are going to be $20 and last me,
2 weeks. Yeah.
So I'm very happy about to run home to those. But I think, really I've been saving the hard hitting question for the end, which is Chicago pizza.
I'm gonna answer in a way most Chicagoans won't like. Go ahead.
Let's get into, because this is really interesting, because not our words, but they are true words, that Connecticut has the best pizza in the world.
Okay.
World.
Okay.
It's
Interesting.
on our welcome sign when you drive into Connecticut. New Haven has the best pizza. It is definitely not deep dish.
Okay.
How do you feel about deep dish, and what are your favorite spots in Chicago?
So this is the caveat that although more than half my life now has been in Chicago, I am not a born and bred Chicagoan. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, so there's that. Because I feel like I'll be controversial in my, I like it. I don't love it. Deep dish pizza. Give me good pan style pizza. That's like where it's at for me, personally. But if you want good deep dish, I would say Illuminati's is probably the best one here.
Oh, if I've been there, I've been to one with like a Q.
You.
You better find it and put it in the show notes.
There's like a Q and there's like a whale on the logo.
You and a whale. Okay.
Yeah.
A quail.
A quail.
A quail.
Just like
One and one.
Just a quail.
A quail.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I had deep dish a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And it was just like, this is a lasagna.
It's basically lasagna.
This is not pizza. I can't.
Lasagna pizza, yeah.
And it's like you're good with like one piece, probably. It's like so.
Literally, in New York, it's like dollars. Well, they're definitely not dollar slices in this economy anymore. Well, $8.
They used to be, yeah.
Yeah, you get a slice, you get a thin paper plate, and you can walk around. But with deep dish, it's like I needed a spatula to attack this thing.
Yeah, you need at least a fork and a knife for sure to deal with that. It is really good though. But yeah, I feel like it's like pizza meets lasagna, which is not a bad thing. It's a whole meal. But
yes, it is. It's just a different.
But it's different. Yeah. Yeah.
So what are some of your favorite? Because Chicago's a huge restaurant city. What top 2 or 3? Maybe not that nightclub you and I went to. What do we get? So wait, that was in New York, right?
That was in New York. We went to, well, it wasn't a nightclub when we arrived, but it turned into one by the time we left.
It was
the classic transition.
Yeah. We let's meet up for this.
There was a musical journey that place went.
Yeah, New York night.
Yeah. And like all of a sudden this DJ's like wheeling in and the lights get low and like lasers and we're like trying to like
what happened
American manufacturing? How do we move the needle?
That was a lot of fun, but yeah, very unexpected. What are my favorite Chicago places? So Osteria Via Stato, that's a really good one in downtown Chicago. Really, really good food. What's another one? I mean, there's RPM Steak, which is not super old, but that's the Juliana and Bill Rancic restaurant, very popular.
Ooh, okay.
Um,
Don't they have RPM seafood also?
they do.
Yeah, I've been there a couple
Yeah.
times. And I went there once and there was no discussion of who was paying for what. And I went in knowing I'm an employee. I'm not paying.
Yeah.
And we balled out. We got like seafood towers and tomahawk steaks. Bill came and it was like $2,000.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
it fell on like 4 people to pay. It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. But the food was amazing. So Chill, where can people find you on the interwebs and on social medias?
So my website is Xochil.com, which is Xochil. If you forget that, you can go to the Chicago Pattern Maker. It will redirect you there. On social media, on Instagram, I'm Fashion Xochil. You can also find the Chicago Pattern Maker, but I don't hang out there as much. So definitely Fashion Xochil is where you'll find me. And then LinkedIn, spend some time over there as well.
I don't know
Nice.
if we're actually LinkedIn friends or connected. We got
We should be. We
Yeah.
will be now. By the
Yeah,
time
we
the
got-
show
we
airs,
actually-
we'll be friends on LinkedIn.
yeah. Definitely. Well, thank you so much. So this was awesome. This was
What a great conversation.
Yeah, I think it was like, I love when we have these conversations that kind of get deeper into specific topics because we're always kind of dancing around the same industry, but then like diving into what does these specifics. And for Melissa and I being much more like in the fashion realm, like diving into like specific pattern makings was so very interesting. I know that there's a lot of listeners who are definitely in that industry also, so they want to hear that. But thank you so much for taking the time to sit
This
down
was
with
so
us.
fun.
Love what you're doing. Keep fighting the fight. I'll see comments.
We're in it together.
Everybody.
And for the listener who is listening and not watching, Xochitl has a sign behind her that says, "Good work isn't cheap and cheap work isn't good." And I think that's the perfect place to wrap it.
Love it. Love it.
thank you
Good.
again.
That's also made in the USA by Oxford Pennant in Buffalo, New York. So
Ding, ding, ding. Hell yeah.
Also,
love it.
Nice. Oh, there you go. There's Matt's sign too.
made in America, baby.
Amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you very much. So, Joe, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.